Okay.
Hooray.
All right, guys. Got it. We have Kat. And who is this other person?
June.
June. Oh, I'm sorry, June. How are you, June? So if you have questions, I just want to point out a couple of things really quickly. If you have questions, if you look at the bottom of your screen, you can fill in, you can look at that Q&A box at the bottom and just add your name, add your question. It's very simple, and we'll get a notice for it, and then we will absolutely feature your question and let Allie have a go at it. And also, I mean, if you don't feel shy, we might put you on the mic because we may have follow-up questions for you regarding your question. A lot of times I do want to know what you guys are thinking and why you ask questions that you ask, which I think is very informative for us and I think for our guests as well.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, right. So we're going to get started, and I'm just going to let people trickle in because we have so much information to impart to you.
Yes.
And I don't want us to lose any of this time. So first and foremost, what I'm going to do is very briefly and very quickly tell you about Tech 2025. And I have gotten this, I think, down to a science of sorts. Well, maybe not a science, but Allie.
There's a lot of practice. I get it.
you know what I'm talking about. But nonetheless, it is just a way for me to explain to you guys very quickly what we do. And a lot of you ask, I get a lot of these questions, why this topic, what's going on with this, what are you doing at Tech 2025? So this is a great way for me to communicate that to you guys. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay. All right, welcome to the chat. Hi, June, how are you? Thanks for joining us. So anyway, this is Tech 2025. I'm Charlie Oliver. I'm the founder of Tech 2025, CEO as well. For those of you who don't know, it is a community and a platform for learning about emerging technologies. And it's pretty much all of the technologies that are coming about and sort of stewing right now that we're all talking about. It's not just artificial intelligence, though we tend to focus on that the most. It's also 3D printing and VR, AR, MR, and automation and robotics, all that good stuff. We talk about it because these are the things that people want to know about. We launched a year and a half ago. I'm the founder, again, Charlie Oliver. You guys can reach out to me anytime online. I get lots of emails from you. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I am responsive. I will get back to you, I promise. Yeah, some people are like, are you really going to answer? Yes, I will, I promise. Okay, so this is sort of some of the pictures that we have. These pictures are old, but at our live events, when we talk about emerging technologies, the emphasis is on problem solving, on letting you guys come up with solutions to real life problems that are sort of inherent in implementing these technologies, in developing them. AI, automation, machine learning, robotics, these things are not simple by any means. They're very complicated, and we all know that they're going to change our world in significant ways. At Tech 2025, we believe that you should have a say in that you should not only be able to converse about it sort of, in a very grounded way, right? You don't have to be an engineer to have conversations about these technologies, but that you can also participate in them substantively. And if you're looking for ways to participate in developing these technologies, it might be as, an entrepreneur. You might be interested in the political aspect of this because there are, legislatively, we have a lot of work to do to get these these technologies out into the world, or whatever way you might be interested in. And we want to be able to be that platform for you to come and talk and learn and see the opportunities that are inherent. There's a lot of opportunities. We just launched Mission AI, which is another branch of Tech 2025 that will focus solely on research, AI research and machine learning research specifically. And that is to give you guys, again, another tool, and a powerful one, to help you to understand these technologies. The big tech companies are spending billions of dollars globally to fund research in AI and machine learning, literally billions of dollars. And that's just this past year, right? So if that is the case, I feel like we should know what that is. We should have an understanding of it. They are trying to figure this stuff out. We should be trying to figure it out too. Research is definitely a very strong and necessary tool to help us to do that. So our program will help you guys to sort of understand that. We'll be bringing to you topics in research that is relatable. They won't be too high tech, but they will explain what's happening with the development of these technologies in a way that will hopefully help you to grasp it and want to do more, right? We want to be inspired by this work and not afraid of it, which I think a lot of people are. And to that end, we'll be bringing you amazing guest speakers and amazing and an oversight of the industry as well. So, and to that end, Ask the Experts is a part of Mission AI. And what that is it's an opportunity for you guys to come online and to ask the questions that you've been wanting to ask of experts in this field. We don't necessarily get to do that a lot at live events. There are a lot of live events out there. There's a massive ecosystem around AI of events and all kinds of things you can participate in. But we're doing this specifically so that it is convenient for you, and so that we focus more so on the way that the media is covering these topics, right? A lot of us are misinformed by the media. They take they take the research that comes out and they process it so that it's a little clickable, the clickbait thing, and then they sensationalize it. Robots are going to eat us. They're going to enslave us. They're going to da da da. But I think we need to have a platform and a place where we can go to ask smart questions of really smart people and hopefully get some answers that are substantive to inform us. So that's what Ask the Experts is. It's an online learning experience, 1 hour long. It's all about you. All right, you can ask anything you want. So we will choose 5 articles related to a topic and give you guys an opportunity to talk to our experts. And with that being said, our Think Tank Forum, which just launched a couple of months ago, is now live. And everything that we do, if you look at the bottom of the screen, we put in these forums, we put each Ask the Expert session in the forums, so you guys will be able to go in there and get the resources and the questions and everything, the video and the audio directly in the forum. I will send you an invite. You sign up. We have to approve you because these are private forums. We don't want any and everyone coming in. But after we approve you, you'll be good to go. You can come in, add your own feedback, start your own conversation. This is a place for you guys to figure some things out yourself and to have fun doing it. So to that end, I have an amazing Ask the Experts session today. We are so thrilled to be able to welcome Allie Knight. I cannot tell you how this was a special one for me because we've been talking about this for a couple of months, and Allie has been beyond amazing to work with, and she has the enthusiasm that really makes it fun to do this, right? So she wants to talk to you guys about this stuff, and she's so giving of her time and of her information. So we are truly, truly lucky to have her today. And the topics that we'll be discussing is everything that I sent you guys in the email that you received. And this is Allie Knight, all right? So she's pretty fly. I found her online. That's not as bad as it sounds. I was doing research in trucking, and
it's not hard.
I found her on Craigslist. No, but really, I found her online. So I'm going to just briefly tell you, Allie Knight is a self-professed weird chick from Boston by way of Texas and Montana. How can you not love that, right? She's a rare trucker indeed. She's a female millennial. I didn't mean to put your age in there, Allie. I'm so
Oh, no, it's fine. Don't worry about it.
All right, 30
Wrong
years
anyway.
Yeah. Oh, what are you, 34 now? When you much older? Okay. She's a long-haul truck driver since I think it's 2014.
Yes.
And she trained and drove for USA Trucks for about a year, and then hauled flatbeds for Legacy Transportation. So when we say long haul, we mean cross country, right? So this is not last mile stuff. This is like her with big rigs driving cross country, which is amazing. And during that time, she achieved YouTube stardom, which I think is also another thing that drew me to her, because she documented her experience in a way that gave her a following that was incredible. And honestly, I think it's pretty profound. Most of her followers are men, age 24. I think they're fairly young, and we would love to learn more about your audience and what you're hearing from them, because primarily your audience are fellow truckers, right?
Yes.
So that's pretty fascinating. So to that end, before I turn it over to Allie, oh great, hold on 1 second. Okay, here's a quote that Allie gave that I shared with everyone earlier. And I love this quote because I think it sort of sums up a lot of what we're going to be talking about. And she says, "I am starting to see a generational shift from the old boys club who don't want to keep up with the changes in the industry, and I can't blame them. Between technology changes and the regulations they face, it's almost a different industry." And she gave this quote to truckdrivingjobs.com. And I just think that the changes that we're all experiencing can't be understated. The impact of the changes, the speed at which everything is happening, is having a profound effect on everybody, and on some more than others. So Allie will tell us about that in a second. And just so you guys know, we actually were supposed to have her live at a live event here a couple of months ago. And we unfortunately, this was my fault, we had to cancel it. But I have to tell you guys that we posted this in Facebook. And on Facebook, we received like literally about 50 comments from truck drivers across the country immediately, all within about a couple of hours, if that. And the comments were not very happy. They were they were angry. Right? I was surprised at the intensity and the level of anger that they were expressing. Now, these are not so bad, but there were others that were clearly like, "What are you doing? And where are you?" And that made me all the more determined, and it made it clear to me that we need to have these discussions in these platforms to figure this stuff out all the more. One thing I will tell you is that one of the truck drivers left a comment along the lines of, well, if the millennials are taking our jobs and the women are taking our jobs and the robots are taking our jobs, where does that leave men? So it was a profound experience, and I talked to Allie about that, and we decided that we wanted to make what Allie is going to share with you today accessible to everyone, not just people in New York where the event would have taken place. And that event, that experience with the truck drivers who were expressing anger and really, I mean, it's valid. A lot of it is valid. I mean, right? They have concerns. They feel disrespected. They have been disrespected. And our event, I think, did not help that, because what I have learned since then, and after looking at this and after talking to Allie, what I've learned is that I was a little insensitive in how we phrased this conversation. It's trucking companies are using emerging technologies to draw, millennials and women. And I had another title along the lines of, how can we get millennials and women into the trucking industry? And I just was completely disregarding the truck drivers who are there, because in my mind, hey, they're leaving in 10 years, and let's see what we can do to push things along. That was disrespectful. And I also think it was wrong. I think that the drivers who are there now, who are going to be leaving the industry and retiring, we have to help them to transition out of the industry with dignity, with respect, right? Give them the respect that they deserve. And also, I happen to think, and Allie, you can speak on this more than I can, but I happen to think that these truck drivers who are there now, retiring in a few years, they have a lot to give the industry, that they can maybe even start their own businesses where they help the industry to figure out some of these problems, where they turn some of these problems that the industry has into opportunities for themselves to have businesses after they retire. So anyway, this has been a learning process. And we started this process with the driverless trucks a year ago with Seth Clevenger. Last week, we had Shankri, who was amazing. She talked about last mile logistics, which is really, really a big problem. And today, that brings us back to Allie, who's going to talk about these 5 topics and these articles in these topics. So I'm going to turn things over. Thank you guys for being patient. I just love to give you guys a little bit of background. After she gives her introduction and her presentation, we're going to open the floor up to some questions. And I have all of your questions. You guys asked literally a lot of questions. We have about 8 questions already. If you'd like to ask more, that's no problem. Or if you have a question you haven't asked and you want to ask another one, just look at that bottom box. It says Q&A. Put the question in there and we will get it answered. Okay. So Allie.
Hi.
Hi. How are you?
Charlie. Good. How are you
Very
doing?
welcome. Thank you for joining us. Okay. So who are you? And what do you do? And what qualifies you to be an expert?
It's qualifications. It's something that happens in this industry a lot with truckers. Excuse me, they want to know how far you've driven and what kind of trucks you've driven and what kind of freight you pulled all the time. So I have done all 48 contiguous states. I have not done Alaska yet, but that is on my list. So I haven't done any of Canada either. So I've hauled dry van and refrigerated and flatbed. I've got about 3 years of experience under my belt. I did 48 states in 6 months, which is something that a lot of people don't ever do in their lifetime of driving.
Wow.
So that was kind of I was upset about it because a lot of people are like, oh, I've never been to Maine or Vermont or some dumb state, like, out in the middle of nowhere or something. I've never been to North Dakota. I'm like, well, I'll go to all 48 and you watch me do it in a year. And I did it in 6 months. So, so I hate to say it, but I've been around. I've had enough front and center experience as that long haul driver at this point. So those are my major qualifications. I do a lot with technology anyway, because I run a YouTube channel, so I know how all of that internal stuff works. So I have that on my belt too. But yeah, that's what I do. I drive trucks. I deliver freight and I pick up more freight and I go somewhere else.
That's fantastic. Can you give us a bit of insight? It's actually pretty profound that you've hit all 48 states, and it's no wonder that your YouTube channel is so popular. I've watched more than a few of your videos, and I feel like I'm right there with you guys.
Yes.
We'll share the link with you at the end of the show so that you can go check out her channel, and she will tell you at the end of the show, she will tell you sort of more about her new channel, I think, or
it's the same channel. I'm just putting out new content starting in May of 2019.
Okay.
So I'm waiting out a non-compete.
Okay. No, get the legal situation straight, please.
Right. It'll be good. It'll be good.
Awesome. So why don't you share with us, I know you have a presentation regarding what it's like being a truck driver, which is something that I don't think any of us can speak to, and it was pretty shocking when I learned myself. So what is it like to be a long haul truck driver?
Well, let's go ahead and look at, I've set up a couple of slides to show you what you go through as a driver, whether it's, we'll get into it. I'll just show you what it's like to be a driver. So let's go ahead and share this. We start with, what do you think of when you hear truck driver? Usually a bunch of older guys, usually mostly white. They look like cowboys, or they look like they're super unhealthy and they drive completely different trucks. It's a huge industry that's full of a whole bunch of different people, but that's not who we talk about when we talk about truck drivers. So we'll start there. What do you think of? You don't think of me for sure. So then from there, let's see if I can get this to actually, there we go. Which career path would you choose? Now this is saying these are jobs that people could get after a 4-year degree or not even. And of course, truck drivers currently make on average, and this is all from the Labor Bureau of Statistics. So a heavy equipment tractor trailer driver like myself, average makes $42,000 a year. If I were any sort of a young person or anybody that was looking to change careers, that probably wouldn't be something that I would think to do unless I wanted to get paid to travel easily. And that's where tractor trailers are really good, because you get paid to do a job and travel. It's awesome. An owner operator, which is a completely separate individual who runs their own truck, owns their own equipment, runs their own truck. Averages, a friend of mine actually averages about $1 a mile. And the way that he runs, he'll make about $65,000 a year. If he ran harder, he could make more. If he ran not as hard, easier, he would make less. So that's an average owner operator is still pulling in only $65,000. So this gives you an idea of why people may not want this job. So that's the thing. As a truck driver, this is usually how your time away from home happens, which is why a lot of people don't want this job. You get 1 day off for every 7 days out as a company driver. So that adds up, when you do that math, to about 39 days a year. In a traditional job, you get 104 days off, 40 hours per week, 5 days a week. In a 3-day off situation with 10-hour days, you get 157 days off. So again, I don't know why you'd want to be away from home as often, especially if you have a family or friends you hang out with on a regular basis. So again, truck driving is a little strenuous. Driving conditions. These are all screenshots from my videos. Like, these are all things I've been through. Lots of snow, torrential downpour, icy lots, traffic in Atlanta. I mean, these are all things that happen on a regular basis. And I mean, the sun hasn't even come up in Atlanta and there's already traffic. So this is something that you face on a regular basis as a driver. It's not, and you're carrying, 42,000 pounds or 45,000 pounds on the back of your truck, and you do one wrong thing and it could be fatal. which brings us to more driving conditions. Now, these are all accidents that are either really famous because they were a big deal, or, I mean, these pileups have been happening like crazy lately during the winter. They're awful. These are things that people have to worry about as a driver on a regular basis. It's like my biggest fear is getting in a hideous accident. So this is, again, another reason why people probably wouldn't want this job. Carrying on, here's your living conditions. This is my truck. This was my last truck. It was a Peterbilt 579. I love it. I'm probably going to buy one because it was a great truck. It served me well. It was spacious for what you get. It's still an 8x10 box. It's like a small studio apartment in New York City. I mean, tiny. And it's got a great view on some days. I mean, when you travel the country like this, you don't get to see the pretty parts of every city. You get to see the parts nobody wants to go to, which are all the industrial parks. So this was my truck. It was very small. So it's good for one, and it's good for one that's like 5'6" and 130 pounds, but you get a larger person in there and it becomes kind of uncomfortable, especially if you travel with a lot of stuff. So then how do we treat trucks and drivers? This is all over the country. Nobody wants truck stops nearby. Nobody wants to be near trucks. There are lots of parking lots that say no truck parking, no overnight parking. You can't park here. You can't leave your stuff here. There's a good reason for that. And that's how truck drivers treat the rest of the environment, which we'll get into. But this happens everywhere all over the country. Nobody wants to see a truck because they don't know what goes into trucks. How do we feed truck drivers? Again, this is a huge problem because this leads to being overweight and unhealthy on the road, which you need healthier people driving those trucks in order for them to stay alert and not get in those terrible accidents. So this is normally what you run into on the road. And when you're under a tight schedule, you can't really eat a salad while you're driving down the road. It just doesn't really work. So these are literally truck stops that I have been to, and the food that they serve you on a regular basis. And the pizza, while it is really good, is not really good for you. Again, this is what we feed our drivers. And then how do we train new drivers? This is a big deal because I had to go through training. I didn't have anybody in the industry that drove that could teach me how to drive. I had to go through a school. So you go to school for 3 to 4 weeks, they get you your CDL license. You don't have a lot of experience by the time you get that license. In fact, the way that they taught me how to parallel park was how they cheated it. And they put markers on the trailer and on the steering wheel and said, do this, do that, you'll pass, no problem. So that doesn't really teach me how to parallel park. Now I know how to do it now, but I had to really work at it. So then once you've gotten your CDL, normally if you haven't just gone to school and paid the $6,000 to go to school, you have signed on with another company, which is what I did, to drive for them for a year, and they pay for your school. Then you are at orientation for a couple of days, and then you get stuck in a truck with someone you have never met for the next 6 to 12 weeks, learning how to do the job. You don't get to go home for that time. You get to go home with whoever the truck driver was because they get home time. So you get stuck wherever they were, which for me was like Tulsa, Oklahoma. Sometimes the trucks are an absolute mess. You don't know what you're walking into. You don't know who that person is or how they're going to react to you. The hotel is pictured because the industry standard is to double you up while you're at orientation or staying at a terminal with another driver that you have never met. And thankfully, it's usually of the same sex, although I have heard some terrible things where people have put like 3 people in trucks or have been paired up with the opposite sex and whatnot. So there's just not enough drivers for lady trainers, as far as there aren't enough women in the industry to train more women in the industry. But yeah, these are the conditions that we put new drivers through. And then once you pass all of that, if you can make it through those 3 to 4 months of training, you get your own truck and you can drive by yourself. And that's pretty awesome, but it's really hard to get through, and a lot of people don't get that far. So then we get to how do drivers treat the environment. A lot of these are actual photos of truck stops, the things that you will find all over the road. I mean, this is normal. And this isn't just because the drivers are lazy, because a lot of them are, but there are also carriers that will tell them, if you have anything on the back of your truck and we don't need it, just make it disappear. And this is the easiest way for truckers to make things disappear so that they can go run their next load and make their 25 to 42 cents a mile, because you don't make any money if the truck is not running. So this is a huge problem that no one is really addressing. But that explains why a lot of people don't want truck stops or trucks in their plazas or near their homes or anywhere near their towns, because this happens. So where do we go from here? That's the big question, right? How are technologies going to help solve a lot of these problems? Because a lot of it is a social issue, and a lot of it isn't necessarily something that we can fix immediately. But the things that the industry is focusing on is fuel economy, electric trucks, trying to make the electronic logs, which mandate when you can drive and when you have to sleep, easier, how you can track your trucks. I mean, most of the technology that is coming out is dealing with stuff that you deal with in the actual company, not so much stuff for the drivers. So the driver situation hasn't gotten any better anytime soon. It's been like this since deregulation probably started in about the 70s when things started to fall apart. But what I do think is really interesting is the way that they're training drivers, because there are a lot of simulators out there now, and they do help. They're very interesting to use, but they are starting to make their way into training classrooms. So that will be really neat. So that's really what I have put together to give you an idea of what it's really like out here. That's my experience.
That's incredible. For those, thank you so much for that, Allie. The first time that I saw your presentation, I have to admit that I was kind of shocked. Not that I thought it was a job of luxury at all. I know that it's obviously a difficult job that a lot of people don't want. But there is something about those images that you sent and that you posted, and the idea of, you know, having to work under those conditions and work all day, every day, you know, it's pretty shocking. So just one quick question for you guys before we move forward. How many people now, is there anyone here who knew that these were the conditions of drivers before you know, came to this? I mean, oh, Kat raised her hand. Hi, Kat. How do you know about that? I mean, are you a part of, can you type it in the chat bar? We have actually quite a few people who are also in the business. One of my dad's friends is a truck driver. Wow.
It's amazing when you start talking to people as to how many people are related to a truck driver. So
okay.
It's
wow.
quite interesting.
Yeah, well, I think I told you yesterday, my grandfather was a truck driver for years, for decades, most of his life. So, and not that I was surprised by that, but I was surprised that it's now becoming, oh, look, Ray Gerald. Ray, can you tell us, how do you know about this? How are you related to this topic in this industry? If you can type it in the chat bar, that would be great. Thank you guys so much for your feedback. Here's what's going to happen. We're going to talk. So this is part of this topic, and part of talking about this today, and the Ask the Experts sessions is about, number one, identifying a problem in the way that it's really supposed to be identified, meaning this is not about all of the hype and the hoopla. This is about the people who are actually living with this disruption, these problems that need to be solved. And we want to identify also opportunities that are there for you guys to either participate in this. If you want to figure out some of this stuff, if you have a startup, or if you want to launch a startup, or if you have a consultancy and you think that you can go into the trucking industry and give them something that they desperately need, which turns out to be a lot, this is a place where you can come and ask questions and maybe get some ideas. Okay. So to that end, we are going to talk about, first and foremost, he says, Ray Gerald says, I am working with a truck driver entrepreneur. Fascinating.
Nice.
Fascinating. We'd love to learn more about that. Maybe we can talk about that with you in the forums, by the way. So yeah, we would love to talk about the topics that we have highlighted, which Allie is going to give us her take. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Allie will give us her take on these topics, because these are the topics that we are hearing and seeing in the media. Excuse me, that's not the one that I wanted to show. And these are the topics that are being sensationalized and somewhat hyped. And I just want to ask Allie, just so that we can have a really good understanding of what's really happening in the industry. Well, I don't know why my thing is strolling. Oh, okay. Sorry, guys. I must be on some sort of annoying delay. These are the 5 topics. These are the 5 articles that we chose. At every one of these Ask the Sessions, we will choose articles that are, number one, either very much, they were either viral, or they're hot topics that everyone is talking about in the industry, or, you know, we feel that they are under the radar and maybe they should be addressed, and we want to know what our speaker thinks. So Allie, looking at this list, I want you, and I know you've read all of the articles, pick the one that you as a truck driver think is the most pressing issue.
The most important pressing issue is probably the U.S. ports from coast to coast brace for possible impact from China trade war. Mostly because that's going to affect this truck driver shortage. Let's say, for instance, and that's what the ports, especially LA and Long Beach, poor LA and Long Beach, they're bracing for a turnaround in how much freight they get in from China, because that's where the vast majority of freight comes in. The freight starts to slow down there, the freight starts to slow down everywhere, because that's where the majority of goods come in and get distributed throughout the country. So if the freight flow coming in slows down, then the demand slows down, and then all of a sudden you don't have a truck driver shortage because there are more truck drivers than there is freight. So that's the biggest, most immediate article of this list that actually has some impact.
And that shocks me because I would not have thought that. And you actually just mentioned this to me last night when we talked on the phone. This is why it's so important to have discussions about this, because I didn't even mention this to Allie. We were on the phone last night and she mentioned it to me, and I thought, what? Wait, you mean oh, that's right. The trucking,
it's all connected.
The trading, the trade wars would impact tremendously trucking. And we don't think about that because when we click send next day on Amazon, I mean, it comes the next day. So what do we know, right? But Allie, what did you see in that article, and what is it that you think we need to do, or that you would like to impart to people about this topic that we can sort of take along our way?
Well, the part that's really important is that to realize that everything is connected. So every little thing that happens, or any little political move that starts to happen, will start to affect the economy all over the economy. And trucking as a whole is really the logistical lifeblood of the country. So when something like a truck driver shortage happens, or there's a trade war, it affects that sort of lifeblood that runs the country immediately. You know, within the next 6 to 8 months, we'll probably see more effects of it, depending on what Congress is going to do now, because they're kind of like stepping up and saying they're going to try and put in some oversight for these tariffs, which would be great, but we'll see if anything actually happens. But it does, all of this affects like especially the little guy, because a truck driver, again, is like the bottom of the barrel as far as like the lowest of the low on the totem pole. And that's where they're going to get affect immediately and the hardest. I mean, now you see things like there's this truck driver shortage and the rates have gone sky high, which is great for owner operators because they're getting really good like getting paid very well per mile. But that affects people at the grocery store or on Amazon. I mean, Amazon just raised their prices 20% in order to cover shipping costs. I believe it's General Mills is raising their prices on their cereals and most of their products because, again, shipping costs. They just hand that right down the line. It's not something that they want to pay for. They're going to hand it off to the consumer, which is us.
Yeah, that's not cool, actually.
No.
What would be, thank you for that explanation. What would be the next thing on this list that you think is the most pressing?
The most pressing, let's see, the U.S. doesn't have enough truckers and it's starting to cause prices to rise for about everything. I kind of just went over that one. So I guess that's the next one, because I just talked about how Amazon raised their prices and General Mills is raising their prices, and you'll see it start to affect everywhere in the industry. That prices will start to go up for everything, little bit by little bit.
And actually, that was the impetus for our event with you all together. Actually, our event 6 weeks ago, 2 months ago, and for this call was for me putting together events that I'm hoping will resonate with the audience. You know, the idea that we are having such a tremendous crisis with regards to the truckers and not having enough of them, it's something that we don't tend to think about. Again,
and we've had this problem for years. Like, this is the same thing that if you start doing like research on archival articles, you'll see people that have been talking about a driver shortage for a very long time, but it's really starting to come to a head because of electronic logs. And so the regulations have gone in that an electronic log is required in every truck. And before, you could run on a paper log, which was very easy to cheat. Now you have a lot of people that say they can't make money because they have to run an electronic log, which is harder to cheat. So a lot of them have retired or decided that they are no longer going to run in the industry because of that. So that's where this driver shortage has really started to spike, is because of this electronic log law that has been kind of pushed off for a few years, but it's been a heated debate for quite a while.
And so now, just so you guys know, part of the problem as well is that, millennials don't want these jobs. And the truck drivers, the average age of a truck driver now is about 50, 55. And they are retiring in the next 10 years. And we don't have the millennials and women just don't, these jobs.
Nobody wants this job. It doesn't matter who they are. They don't want it.
Right. And what happens
is people that are in it usually don't want it.
Don't want it. And so the problem is actually a massive problem. If we don't get around 200,000 drivers to make up for the loss in the next several years, I mean, we're looking at a real hit to the economy that will.
And it's not going to get any better because automated trucks, again, so could self-driving trucks be good for truckers? Yes, because when it starts to be regulated, they're going to regulate it similar to the way that the FAA regulates pilots and autopilot. You still have 2 pilots in most commercial aircraft. The only place that you really don't have them is much smaller planes that only need 1 pilot, which would be like your local or your, not your 3PL, the last mile problem. You'd have probably 1 driver delivering that last mile load. So as far as a long haul truck, you'd more than likely have 2 drivers, which right now you don't have in a lot of trucks. So it could get worse.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Part of the catch-22 with that is that what I was hearing from people online in the comment section was, why should I take a job in trucking as a truck driver when I'm going to be replaced by a machine or AI in the next 10 years?
You won't. Actually, I think it'll get easier, which I'm actually really excited for these self-driving trucks because my job will get much easier.
But well, that's an interesting point. So your attitude actually is a bit contrary to to a lot of other truck drivers who think that it is not so great, correct?
Right.
Is that just blatant fear of robots taking their jobs, or is it?
Probably. I mean, you've had that problem with like automating warehouses and stuff. People talk about how Amazon is automating their warehouses, but honestly, they continue to open up warehouses that need hundreds of people in them. So it's not like the jobs are disappearing.
Right. Just yet. Okay.
It's going to be a while.
It'll be a while. Okay. So looking at this listing, guys, we're just going to go through the next 2, and then we have your questions. There were like 8 questions that were sent in by you so far, which for me is a lot. So let's get through this. Yay. So Allie, what's the next? So we've covered 3. What's the next thing on this list? Next article that you think is?
Let's see what we need to know about emerging technologies in American truck driver shortage. Seth kind of went over a lot of the stuff that I went over in my presentation. The same thing with the America has massive truck driver shortage, and here's why few want the job. A lot of that was presented in what the job is really like and what people can expect. You know, there are long hours, you're away from home a lot. There aren't really a lot of solutions for local jobs yet, but that's what those 2 articles sort of coincide with, and talk pretty much the similar points. So a lot of it has been gone over in that presentation.
So a lot of this is sort of redundant, and it intersects, right? Well, this is the great thing, because what we see in the media is that they will cover an article from different perspectives and all highlight certain things. So this is great that you're sharing this with us. And guys, we're heading into the Q&A section now, but before I leave, I just want to highlight that Seth Clevenger, which is the next to the last article, What We Need to Know About Emerging Technologies. He spoke at our event last year. Seth is a friend of the Tech 2025 community. He is the managing editor of Transport Topics. I think it's a magazine, right? Or should I say Transport Topics publication. It's an online publication, one of the top actually on transportation and logistics, and they offer great insights into trucking and logistics and shipping, and also obviously how technologies are impacting the industry. So Seth welcomed doing this. He actually gave us his feedback. I asked him, and I called him specifically and asked him for this, and he wrote this answer for us. We will give you this link, and we'll give you the link to all of the articles, and you can go in and see them for yourselves. Okay, on to the Q&A section. We now have any questions? We sure do. You guys sent these in early. So these are the questions that you sent in. We're gonna go through them one by one. If you have a question, feel free to leave it down in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. I promise you we're gonna try to get to all of them. So let's get it started in no particular order. And I'm not saying who sent in this question, because some people want to remain anonymous. If you did, however, send in a question and you'd like to let me know, please just type in the chat box to the right, and I will shout you out, and I might have an additional question for you. So after we finish this, Allie is going to ask her question of us. I didn't tell you guys that, but you're going to get to be the expert, because Allie has a question of you that she believes will help her and people in the industry to figure out some things. So
I hope so.
Yeah, I hope so too. I hope we can crush it for you. So anyway, here's the first question. What regulations do you think need to be in place for autonomous trucks?
Well, I think, again, the place to look is the Federal Aviation regulations, as far as how they regulate commercial pilots, and the hours of service are already very similar, but you're going to need to have 2 different pilots in that truck, so you have 2 different pilots in the plane in case, worst case scenario. So I think that those are the kind of regulations that really should be looked at and mirrored. I haven't really seen a lot that says that those regulations don't work. So That's good. But that would be my direction for autonomous trucks, is you're more than likely going to want to look at the airline industry and what they're doing with their autopilot, because they've had it for years.
That's fascinating. I never thought of that.
Mm-hmm.
Never would have thought of that. Okay, thank you for that.
No
The
problem.
second question sent in by someone is, what working condition do you think is the worst disincentive, excuse me, to attracting new drivers to the trucking industry?
The work, aside from it being a low-paying job, is being away from home for as long as you are. And it takes a lot to get into the industry and then actually make good money and be home when you want to be home. One of my friends just got into his truck, and now he can be home whenever he wants, but he had to work like 18 years to get there. I will be getting my own truck and doing what I want with it, and that'll probably take another year before I can finally get the schedule that I really like to. But that's just the way that I work, because I'd like to put in a little bit of money so that I can make my truck payments and take some time off. So those are the two big ones: being away from home that often and a low paying job for such a long time, because you're looking at anywhere between 3 to 5 to 7 years before you can really get into your own truck if you don't have good credit, or if you can't get a better paying job immediately.
Now, I will tell you something, that this is a topic that I've somehow, for some reason, find to be so, I don't know, I take this topic very personally. I feel like this is something we can and should solve right away, because millennials are not going to put up with this. I mean, this is the generation that stayed at home longer than most than the prior generation. So anyway, this is oh, wait a minute, I didn't mean that negatively. I didn't mean that. No disrespect to my millennials, but this is one of those things where if we can solve this, that would be huge, right? And so that's a big reworking of the way the system works. But it's if you have the gumption in you to tackle a problem, this is one that needs to be solved. So that's great. I'm going to actually take a question now from someone in the chat forum, because you guys are also posting questions in the Q&A box as well. Let's see, Shankri. Hi, Shankri. She actually came and spoke at our event 2 weeks ago on Last Mile Logistics, and she was incredible. Shankri wants to know, are you part of any unions or trucking organizations?
I was part of the Women in Trucking. I'm not part of OIDA, which is the other big one, which is the owner operators. I think it's like international or something. I'm not really interested in OIDA because all they want to do is deregulate the industry, which is what caused all of these problems in the first place. Yeah. So I have no interest in, they're thinking bigger company picture. They're not really paying attention to the little guy. Women in Trucking, I believed, thought they were going to do really good things for the little guy, but they do so many more corporate events than they do for like little truckers. So
that's terrible.
I know, right? So no, I'm not currently part of any unions or trucking organizations. There used to be I think it was a Teamsters union was the big trucking union, and when everything got deregulated, the union fell apart. So.
Well, if you were to create a union or an organization, or if someone else did, what would be the ideal union or organization for you right now?
There's someone that was thinking about doing it, but I don't really like their tactics. But if I was going to start some sort of a union, it would be someone that would have enough power to say to these mega carriers, you need to pay your drivers right. You need to send them home when they want to go home, right, instead of treating them like cattle and saying, oh, you need to stay out for 8 weeks before you can go home for a week. Yeah.
Wow.
That would be my big one, is that they could argue with these mega carriers like Swift and Knight that just merged together, and these companies that are just massive and have hundreds upon thousands of drivers.
Yeah, that's kind of the big thing.
They're hard to fight.
Very hard, very hard. I can just imagine. Okay, so the next question that we have, this is a question that was sent in by someone earlier. What is your biggest safety concern when you are on a job?
Getting in a hideous accident. Seriously, like that's the worst nightmare, is having somebody that is either out of control or cause an accident that I can't get out of. That's my biggest fear, is getting in a terrible accident, because I'm driving an 80,000-pound death machine. I mean, that is asking somebody's going to die, and that's awful. I do not want to be responsible for that. So I try to be the safest driver I possibly can and give myself lots of room on the road, and I watch for everybody doing whatever else they're doing. And if the weather is really bad, I'm off the road. I'm not driving in something that's going to cause an accident. Wow. Absolutely not. They're terrible. You hear about all these awful accidents, and my heart drops whenever I see a really bad accident.
And we never really hear about that stuff, right?
Oh, no, you really do. You hear all about like truck kills,
Well, that's true.
hockey team in Canada. I mean, that one was
Right.
recent. I mean, and I haven't looked into it in a couple of months, but they're investigating as to what happened at this intersection because it was in the middle of nowhere, clear day, straight lines, and they still collided.
Wow.
Awful, awful.
Unbelievable. Wow. This is the next question that someone sent in is, what are the greatest challenges you have faced as a truck driver and as a female driver?
The biggest challenges I faced as a driver was actually finding parking at particular times of day. The worst
I
time.
heard that was the biggest problem. I actually talked to
It's
Michelle
awful.
yesterday. Okay.
It's
Can you
awful.
explain to us why it's so hard for truck drivers to?
A lot of it is the way that people log their books now. So you have a lot of people that are driving during the day rather than at night, because that's the preference, is to drive when you can see more rather than at night. It's safer to drive during the day than it is at night. But then you have so many trucks on the road now that the facilities can't handle the load. So you'll actually see this if you start driving at night on highways and you start looking at rest areas or off ramps, you'll see trucks and they'll be parked there. And that's where they spend the night, is on off ramps and in crowded truck stops and on the sides of streets or in Walmart parking lots. You'll see them because that's the only place there is to park. So when I was driving, I had like a particular time frame I'd have to look at. So if it was getting between 5 and 7 o'clock, I could maybe park at a truck stop, but I would have to stop within that couple of hours. If it was between 7 and 10, I'm looking at rest areas because those still have openings. And if it's after 10 o'clock, all bets are off. I'd be lucky if I found a parking spot. I'm looking at Walmarts and Home Depots and Lowe's, or hiding behind plazas and stuff to park for my 10-hour break. Like, that's,
Wow, with a
there's
big
nowhere else
truck.
to park with a big truck, right? So I have to start looking while I'm driving. Where am I going to park tonight? Where am I going to park tonight? How far can I go? How many hours do I have left? Yeah, that was my biggest challenge, was finding parking. As a female truck driver, I don't know that anything was really terribly different. I mean, the one that I wrote down when I was looking at these questions was mansplaining, because when I would go find a place to park and try to back into a spot, there were people that would think, oh, it's a girl and she's driving, I should help her back in.
Okay.
I would have to deal with people that would be like, do you want me to help you back into this spot? And sometimes I'd be like, no, I got it. And they would still try to help me back into the spot.
Oh,
I was like,
wow.
I know what I'm doing. Just because I'm a girl doesn't mean I don't know how to drive this truck. Yeah, I get that a lot. When I first started driving, I actually had someone come up to me. I was pulling onto a scale to weigh my truck and see how my axle weight distributed along the truck.
Okay.
And the guy in another truck pulled up to the scale and he was like, man, all you gotta do is sit and look pretty in that truck. And I was like, are you kidding me?
Oh, that's horrible. Well, the horrible thing about that is that, we can laugh about it. And I know, believe me, I'm a woman. I understand. but honestly, this is the type of stuff that women don't want to have to deal with.
Right. Well, I don't use a CB radio at all. And those pileups are happening because people aren't using CB radios because they're full of people that just want to get your attention. I actually had a driver in North Carolina call into my safety department to say that I ripped a mirror off of his truck because I wouldn't pay attention to him at an intersection. And he tried to get me in trouble with my safety department. Yeah. The description that he gave the safety department was the strawberry blonde that drove the black Peterbilt.
Oh, like, wow.
Wow. Really?
Blonde. Okay. Well, that brings us to another problem with regards to bringing on new truck drivers and technologies and sort of the industry changing. And I brought this up to Seth when I interviewed him on our podcast, which is that the culture of truck driving desperately, it will change drastically, correct? The problem is that there's not a lot of time to define a new culture while the current culture is there. And there's seems like this weird area of not understanding. There's a weird area now because the culture is what it is, right? It's predominantly men. 94+% of truck drivers are male, and they're not all horrible. There's a lot of good men out there driving trucks, so let's not demonize everyone. But it still is difficult for women. So this is a big issue for the industry. And let me ask you a question before we move on. Are there technologies out there now, mobile or otherwise, that are trying to address helping drivers find parking space?
Not really.
None?
I really wish there were. I would love, I've seen a couple of cities, or not cities, like states. I think Michigan is one of them. And I just drove through another one. I don't know if it was North or South Carolina. But they are starting to put signage on the highways that say how many spots are available in places. Michigan has been really good about it. They'll give you like 3 or 4 different like rest areas or truck stops that are nearby and how many spots are available.
Wow.
Pilot and Flying J were talking about, I don't know how much they're implementing, but they were talking about putting those little hockey pucks in their parking spaces so that they could get data immediately as to how many spots were available at one of their locations. And I believe TA and Petro, which is another big chain, were going to do the same thing. And I think that's absolutely brilliant, and they need to invest in it, because that would give you, you could log into one of their apps, look at how many spots are available at any given location, and just plan to go park there.
Wow.
Or not, depending on how many are available. That would be amazing. It's a lot of infrastructure, and it's a lot of cost for something that people don't see as a big problem.
Well, if it is a big problem, which it is, I am shocked that there's no technological solution for it, because it seems to me like mapping these areas, which is easy enough to do, right? I mean, it's not easy. It does require resources. But hey, guys, if you're looking for something to do, if you're looking to launch a business, the trucking industry desperately needs to help truck drivers find.
I would pay probably $30 a month to have an application that would allow me to find a parking space and then reserve that parking space. I would absolutely pay easily $30 or $40 a month to do that.
Okay, and that's my new venture. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Let me get a quick question from someone who actually is in the forum right now. Ray actually wants to know why self-driving trucks will make the truck driver's job easier, maybe aside from what you said earlier.
Oh, well, let's look at it as like there was that story about an airline pilot who was playing with his iPad and then didn't turn off the autopilot, and then like drove past the plane just kept flying past the airport. Like, that's the kind of easier that truck driving will become. You'll be able to do something else while you're at the wheel. Now, granted, there are times where you don't really want to do that. Like, even Elon Musk says that you need to pay attention while your autopilot is on. We get that. It's okay. But there are less things that I have to worry about if the machine is capable enough to stay in its lane, to have an appropriate following distance, to brake when the car in front of me is braking, that kind of stuff. Like, that will make my life much easier.
Wow.
That would be great.
Again, something that I never would have thought of. Right. That's awesome. Haley has a question. I'm going to go to another question in our forum of someone who's online, the fabulous Haley. We know Haley. She's a friend of the community. And she asks, is the reason why they haven't addressed it because they haven't seen its effect in the process of getting goods to their destination? Haley, what do you mean by that?
She's talking about parking. She's 100% talking about parking. And yes, that has a lot to do with it. Yeah. And it gets worse because, yeah, people are getting their goods to their destination, but then they kick you off their property. They don't want you to spend the night. Or they won't let you park there because, yeah, you've delivered something or picked something up, but a lot of them are like, no, you can't stay here. You have to find somewhere else to go park. Like, okay, thanks. Appreciate the business.
Wow. And going back to my point, just before I move on to the next question really quickly, going back to my point about the anger that we saw in the comment sections under our event, and I've seen quite a few truck driving documentaries, and I'll share those with you guys at the end of the show and in the forums. Truck drivers don't really get the respect that they deserve. They are disrespected. They are disregarded. They have one of the most important jobs in this country, which is transporting our food, our goods, and everything. But I can see where and why they feel disrespected.
Well, it's getting worse too, because it turns into a vicious cycle because they feel like they're disrespected. They stop caring, and then they don't deserve any respect because they stop caring. Like, it's a vicious cycle. It's really bad when you get out there and you look at some of these grizzly old truck drivers that are just so bitter and so angry. And at that point, like, I don't know how many years of psychotherapy or any sort of therapy would help any of that. Like, it's just really rough because this has been going on for decades.
Wow. Maybe teaming up with millennials? I don't know.
You're asking a lot.
I guess. So the next question that was sent in to us earlier is, I would like to know, what is the potential for the first year for someone starting out in the business?
So when I first started out, my potential was 25 to 28 cents a mile, starting to work. And I think I was making about 32 cents a mile when I left my first company after my first year. You're expected to go through 3 to 4 months of training away from home. That first year is going to be really grueling because that's where you learn how to back up, you learn how to deliver, you learn how to manage your time clock so that you can work in the most, hours in a day and hours in a week and so on and so forth. So yeah, the first year is pretty grueling. But if you get through that year accident free, then you've opened up a ton of opportunities to go work at other companies or pull different freight, you know, because they're starving for drivers. If you look at the back of any truck, I bet you anything there's a phone number saying we're hiring. I mean, the vast majority of trailers have an advertisement on the back of their trailer saying they're looking for drivers. So you could work pretty much anywhere. Now, you'll get an upgrade, which is anywhere between 42 and 45 cents a mile, more than likely, unless you work for a company that pays a percentage of the loads. So you could make a little bit more money doing that. But really, you want to look at 3 to 5 years before you're really making good money in this industry, like really good money.
Okay. Wow. This is, I'm going to ask basically one more question, and then Allie has a question that she would like to ask you guys. All right. So, what could some of the future roles, responsibilities of the millennial truckers, not the usual answers, perhaps new opportunities, and what would their lives be like? That's a great, great question. Can we even imagine this?
The future roles and responsibilities of the millennial trucker. I think right now we keep talking about millennials, but honestly, we're like into our 20s and 30s, and the amount of change that has to happen, we're going to be in our 40s or 50s before this really starts to take momentum, I think, because a lot of people just don't care about this issue.
Wow.
So I'm actually looking towards like Generation Z, like my sister's generation, because we have a 10-year gap. So the millennials at this point really need to be the advocates for change. Like that's what we should really be focusing on, is getting people to realize what is happening in this industry and that we need to start making it more attractive to anybody to come work in this industry. Because when you have a positive experience as a truck driver, it's actually a really cool job and it's super rewarding. But you have to have a positive experience in the industry to get there. You know, waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning to drive into the sun and then seeing this amazing sunrise is actually really cool, but you have to get there. And that's something that a lot of people will, you know, they may see it, but they'll be super bitter because something happened, or they have to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, or they have a delivery that they're not going to make because something else happened. Like there's a lot of other stuff that needs to be taken care of before people can have a really super positive experience out there.
Well, I love that you said millennials are the agents for change. I think nothing could be truer than that. Actually, this one question, of all the disruptive technologies, what are you the most excited to see disrupt the shipping logistics space?
Probably the technologies like Uber and Lyft starting to hit the trucking industry. I've actually heard quite a few things where Uber is kind of turning into a quick broker to kind of like negotiate a load between a driver or another company is really what's happening. But I'm kind of interested to see where that disruptive technology comes in, because the easier it is for a driver to get another load and get moving, the better it is for everybody, because then you don't have a truck sitting wasting fuel. You don't have a driver that's not making any money. You don't waste all of those resources trying to find another load. Like that's where I'm really interested. I would love to see that take off in more places than just Uber.
Wow. And maybe there are technologies that would support that technology as well, or that would be, I mean, that's like a whole ecosystem of technologies that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So that's good to know too. So we've got a lot of information. So, hey, this is Allie's question. I know that we're wrapping up now, guys, but I asked Allie to give us a question that she has for you that could help her and people in the industry figure out some of this stuff. So Allie, what's your question?
Well, my big question is, what kind of an awareness campaign do you think would be most effective to tell the general populace what this industry is really like and what they can do to help change it? And it could be technology based, it could be a social campaign, anything that you think could be helpful to get people to realize this is a major problem and we really need to fix this culture. That would be great.
That's a great question. And if you could type your answer, we want to help Allie out here, because I think this is actually a great question. 2 things. Number one, if anyone can give any sort of feedback to this right now, that would be most helpful. We'll share it right now. And the second thing, it's a big question, I know.
This is a shower question.
It's a shower question. It's a couple of showers, actually. Yeah. So here's what we'll do. We're going to put this in the forum. We're going to put all of the resources that we have for you, as well as this question in the forum. Allie will have access to go into the forum, and I'm going to ask you guys to sort of, give her your answers in the forum, and she will respond, and she will check in, right, Allie?
I absolutely will, because this is, I feel like it's a passion project for me at this point.
Yes. and Allie will answer your questions as well. And to that end, I want to tell you guys that we're going to share with you some links on how you can find out more about the trucking industry research. This will be in the forum as well. You'll get an email tomorrow with all of this information. A trucking industry report from 2017 on the industry and technologies that are disrupting the industry. And then, of course, we'll have links. And Allie has given us a bunch of links to share with you if you want to learn more about this and how you can help to disrupt the industry and solve the problem.
Most of the resources I gave you are YouTube channels of other truck drivers if you wanted to see what they go through, because they're completely different perspectives. They're from all over the country and Canada. They're good people.
Oh, see,
watch.
And we need that. I think if you're going to solve a problem, you have to first understand how it's impacting the people who are the closest to it. So,
and YouTube is making a huge difference for getting awareness out as to what the actual job is like. Because when I was researching to become a truck driver, that's where I went, was YouTube, to see what it was like.
And that's how I found you, actually. So, and to that end, thank you so much, Allie, for your time today.
My
really
pleasure.
love this. Appreciate it. Appreciate you. And we hope to do another one with you. There's so many problems that we have to solve in this industry, right?
Sure.
I'm sure it's time for more. So thank you again, guys. If you have any questions, I will give you the forum information. We'll invite you in, and you'll be able to just ask questions in the forum, and we will come in and answer them as best we can. Or Allie will.
I'll do my best.
All right. And to the people who left questions in the question box that we didn't get to, I will put those questions in the forum, and Allie can answer them there. There's a couple.
Yes. There's quite a few.
So thank you guys for your time. Thank you, Allie, for your time.
No problem.
Everyone have a great day, and look for that email that we're going to send you tomorrow with everything, and feel free to respond to me and ask me questions if you like. Okay. Enjoy your day.
We'll see you later.
Bye.